What's up, lit hot academics? Today we're tackling Stephen King's Carrie, a story about telekinesis, bullying, and the most catastrophic prom night in history. But here's the real question. Is Carrie a feminist icon who takes power back, or is she just a victim whose pain is exploited for shock value? Let's dig in.
So, we're talking about pig's blood, religious trauma, and psychic destruction. Sounds like Mean Girls, but with fire and fewer dance-offs.
Pretty much, Horris. Also, fun fact. You know Adam Sandler's comedy album, They're All Gonna Laugh at You? That's a direct reference to this movie. Carrie's mom yells it right before the prom, and it's one of Horris' most iconic lines.
Wow. So Sandler turned Carrie's trauma into a punchline. Somewhere, Carrie White is flipping tables with her mind.
For those of you unfamiliar with the story, here's a quick rundown. Carrie follows Carrie White, a shy, awkward high school girl with telekinetic powers. Raised by her abusive, ultra-religious mom and bullied by her classmates, Carrie is humiliated at prom when they dump a bucket of pig's blood on her. The humiliation triggers her powers and she burns the entire gym and most of the town to the ground.
Huh. It's like what would happen if Final Destination had a school dance? That's dark, even for Stephen King.
It's dark, but it's also layered. King weaves in themes of power, oppression, and societal cruelty, making Carrie more than just a horror story. But that brings us to the real debate. What's the message here? Is Carrie empowering, or is her suffering just a spectacle?
It's suspenseful and depressing. Sounds like King's vibe.
So let's talk characters. There's Carrie White. She's both a victim and a monster. Her telekinesis represents her bottled up rage, but when she finally lets it out, it's super destructive. You want to root for her, but you're also terrified of her.
So she's like a human pressure cooker with supernatural powers? Cool.
Exactly. Then there's Margaret White, Carrie's mom. She's an abusive religious fanatic who's convinced everything is a sin. She's basically a cult leader, and the cult is just her and Carrie.
Ah, the obsessively religious parent that ruins everything trope. Classic.
Next is Sue Snell, a classmate who feels guilty for bullying Carrie. She tries to make amends by getting her boyfriend Tommy to take Carrie to the prom, but even her good intentions backfire.
Oh, so she's the one who thought, let's fix trauma with the prom date. Great idea, Sue.
King doesn't just give us horror for the sake of it. Carrie is packed with big themes: bullying and isolation. The story digs into the long-term damage that bullying can cause. Carrie's entire life is shaped by rejection and cruelty. Female rage and empowerment. Her powers are tied to her emotions, especially her anger. It's satisfying to see her fight back, but it's also tragic because her rage isolates her even more. Religious oppression. Margaret White's fanaticism shows how toxic dogma can destroy lives. The duality of power. Carrie's telekinesis is both her weapon and her curse. It gives her control, but it also alienates her. Society's role in creating monsters. The book asks how much responsibility society bears for people like Carrie. If she wasn't bullied and abused, would she have turned out differently?
So it's part horror, part psychology, and part how not to be awful. Nice.
Carrie was King's first major success. It set the tone for his career. He loves exploiting the intersection of supernatural horror and human trauma.
Right. Like, what if the scariest thing isn't the ghost, but the people?
Exactly. Plus, small town settings, coming-of-age stories, and isolation are all recurring motifs in King's work. Carrie paved the way for other characters like Danny from The Shining and Arnie from Christine, who also deal with powers and social rejection. The book's structure is one of its most unique elements. King mixes traditional storytelling with newspaper clippings, court reports, and interviews to create a documentary feel. It's like you're reading a disaster report while watching the disaster happen.
It's like a true crime podcast, but with psychic meltdowns. I can dig it.
Carrie is a cornerstone of horror literature. It's influenced everything from revenge narratives to depictions of female rage. And it's still relevant today because it forces us to think about how we treat people who don't fit in.
And plus, blood-soaked prom queens are never going out of style.
When King published Carrie in 1974, it was an era of second-wave feminism. The book tapped into fears about women gaining power, literally and figuratively.
So Carrie's powers are like a metaphor for feminism?
Kinda. The 1976 Brian De Palma film turned the book into a cultural phenomenon. It gave us iconic imagery, like Carrie drenched in blood, that still influences horror today. Critics loved the emotional depth and innovative storytelling, but some felt that the violence was a little gratuitous.
Yeah, I mean, let's dump pig's blood on the girl is definitely a choice. But wait, Lars, you still haven't answered the question. Is Carrie about empowerment or exploitation?
Okay, well let's start with the case for empowerment. Carrie shows us a girl who's been mocked, bullied, and controlled her entire life, who's finally taking control. Her powers, telekinesis, symbolize repressed anger and female rage. When she unleashes them, she flips the script on everyone who's wronged her.
So she's like, oh, you're gonna laugh at me? Try laughing while the gym's on fire.
I mean, exactly, Horris. In that sense, Carrie's story is cathartic. It resonates with anyone who's ever felt powerless, offering a kind of revenge fantasy. She's not just a victim, she's a force of nature, burning down the structures, both literally and metaphorically, that held her back. But here's where things get messy. While Carrie's powers are impressive, her story is steeped in suffering. From the infamous shower scene at the beginning to the pig's blood prank, her pain is put on full display. Some critics argue that Carrie isn't empowering, it's voyeuristic. It forces the audiences to watch her humiliation in graphic detail before letting her fight back.
So instead of rooting for her, it's like the audience is rubbernecking her trauma. That's rough.
Exactly. And it doesn't really help that Brian De Palma's 1976 film doubles down on this. The slow-motion prom scene, the close-ups of Carrie drenched in blood, it's undeniably powerful, but is it feminist? Or is it just designed to shock the audience?
It's like, hey, let's feel bad for Carrie for a second, and now let's watch her explode people.
And that brings us to the answer of the question I asked at the beginning of this video. Is Carrie empowering or exploitative? Well, the answer is both. She's a feminist icon because she takes her power back in a society that constantly strips it from her, but at the same time, her power is framed as dangerous and destructive, and her suffering becomes the story's centerpiece. Even in her moment of triumph, she's defined by pain.
So she's both the hero and the victim, like a tragic Greek figure, but with more pyrotechnics and less philosophy.
Exactly, and that's why Carrie still resonates. It forces us to ask tough questions about power, trauma, and how we tell stories about women. Are we celebrating Carrie's strength, or are we just gawking at her downfall? Maybe a little bit of both. And in today's context, Carrie raises even more questions. In the age of school shootings, can a story about a bullied student taking violent revenge feel responsible? After Columbine, Stephen King addressed this in his essay Guns, where he admitted that stories like Carrie can blur the line between cautionary tale and dangerous fantasy.
Is Carrie just the OG revenge fantasy, but with like telekinesis instead of weapons? That's uncomfortable.
It is. While King doesn't glorify Carrie's actions, the story's explosive climax, both in the book and in the film, can feel almost too cinematic, like it risks glamorizing the violence it critiques.
Maybe the real takeaway is don't bully the kid with superpowers. Or anyone, really. Just don't be awful.
So, is Carrie a feminist icon, or does it exploit her pain for shock value? Honestly, it's both. Carrie's story is a raw, emotional look at what happens when society crushes someone's spirit. It's empowering because she fights back, but it's troubling because her suffering is what drives the story.
So we cheer for her, feel bad for her, and also kind of hate ourselves for watching. Heavy stuff, Lars.
Let me know what you think in the comments. Are you cheering for Carrie, mourning her, or maybe both? And while you're here, don't forget to subscribe and hit that notification bell. Chill! Oh, and check out this lyric video for our Carrie track featuring NemRaps.
Y'all don't care about Carrie, I'm a little scary. Decimate the prom, do you dare me? Y'all don't care about Carrie, I'm a little scary. Blood from the rafters, cherry. I've been maimed, there's a stain, it's the shame. Once again, it's the pain of an adolescent game that remains in the town of Chamberlain. All the same tampons got tossed, plug it up, came the drain, who's to blame? Carrie's mother Margaret told her this would solve it. Lock away her daughter in the tiny prayer closet. If Carrie's got a talent, isn't he secret? She can shake the room using telekinesis. Pig's blood in a bucket at the prom, rig the ballot. A multi-layered recipe like boiling a shallot. Now it wasn't everyone who connived when the blood dripped, but you can tell that Carrie was a little bit miffed. It really didn't matter that Miss Collins never did it. Massacre the students in the gym, play the misfit. Carrie, I'm worried that the case is black and white. Forensic from the rafters, what a sight, what a night. Y'all don't care about Carrie, I'm a little scary. Decimate the prom, do you dare me? Y'all don't care about Carrie, I'm a little scary. Blood from the rafters, cherry. Y'all don't care about Carrie, I'm a little scary. Decimate the prom, do you dare me? Y'all don't care about Carrie, I'm a little scary. Blood from the rafters, cherry.
Walking in the prom, place is packed, yo. Sharp as a tack, pat my afro. Carrie and Tommy are voted king and queen of the prom. I can't believe that he wanted these people leading them on. Regardless of what I think, they're both standing in front of us. Just last week they were telling Carrie to plug it up. Sue's here, she's staring at the ceiling. Miss Collins dragging her out, and now I got a funny feeling. I see a little commotion coming from under the steps. What? Heads up, now Carrie's dress is covered in red stuff. Couple people laughing, Norma was the main one. Now I hear screaming, but I don't know where it came from. I don't think that it's safe when everybody is racing, terrified on their faces. Fire hose in the spray and staring back at the stage, and Carrie is in a daze. The curtains begin to blaze. I really need to escape because
Y'all don't care about Carrie, I'm a little scary. Decimate the prom, do you dare me?
Y'all don't care about Carrie, I'm a little scary. Blood from the rafters, cherry. Now you can blame religion, you can blame it on the witchcraft, blame it on the mother like a boat without a life raft, blame it on the culture or the cold New England weather, or what about the parents of the bullies old and bitter? So Carrie's mom thought she'd save her daughter, it was written. Carrie killed the demon, crucified her in the kitchen. Thou shalt not suffer a witch to live, I mean. Exodus 22:18. It's the brouhaha as her legacy survives. Whispers in the halls from the students who survive. Up in the pine tree state, there's a tension in the air. Silent dreams of Carrie and those terrified stares. That's why I'm not going back to class. Skip the prom and I'm gone, grab my keys and my mask. Carrie, I'm wary, did we tell the story right? Forensic from the rafters, what a sight, what a night. Y'all don't care about Carrie, I'm a little scary. Just to make the prom, do you dare me? Y'all don't care about Carrie, I'm a little scary. Blood from the rafters, cherry. Y'all don't care about Carrie, I'm a little scary. Just to make the prom, do you dare me? Y'all don't care about Carrie, I'm a little scary. Blood from the rafters, cherry.
Hey, don't forget to subscribe.